Welcome to the High Performance Man podcast. I am your host, John Fayocavitz. On this show, I interview successful men who have built impressive careers in businesses, founders, CEO, and senior leaders, and professionals who have operated at a high level for years. We talk about what actually made them successful. So the goal is simple: to learn directly from men who have done it so we can apply those insights into our own careers, businesses, and lives and continue raising our own standard of performance. The show is sponsored by the Prime Performance Method. The Prime Performance Method is designed specifically for high-performing men who have achieved success in their careers but feel like their body and energy have taken a hit along the way. We help busy professional men regain strength, lose weight, and feel younger without the long workouts, extreme dieting, or disrupting your demanding schedule. So if you're a high-performing man who wants to feel strong in your body as you are in your business, message me in John Fayocavitz on LinkedIn. On today's show, we have Rishad Tobaccowala, who is the author of Rethinking Work and Restoring the Soul, which helps people see, think, and feel differently about how to grow themselves, their teams, and their businesses. Rishad, thank you so much for coming on. We're so excited to have you on today.
John, thank you for the invitation.
You're so welcome. Okay. Well, let's first start out. Are you just an author, or do you have a business that you do, or you have a?
So this is my second career. So my first career, I spent 37 years at a large marketing communications company called the Publicis Groupe,
Okay.
which has about 106,000 employees today. And I was one of the 5 senior executives who worked there for about 37 years and helped build it with a team. When I stopped working there, I was the chief strategist and growth officer globally and
Wow.
also on the board. I decided 7 years ago, at the end of this month, it'll be 7 years ago, but I decided before that every career has a midnight hour and the smart people leave at 5 to 12. That too many people stay on and stay on and stay on. And so when everybody thought I was good and everybody wanted me to stay, I decided to start a new career. And
Awesome.
my new career is to help people see, think, and feel differently about how to grow themselves, their teams, and their business. Specifically, I do 3 different things, but they're built around doing that thing, which is helping people grow. But I do it in one-to-many ways, one-to-some ways, and one-to-one ways. So one-to-many ways is a way of saying content. So it's my 2 books, which are Restoring the Soul of Business and Staying Human in the Age of Data. I have a Substack, which is read by about 32,000 people every Sunday at rishad.substack.com. And I have 3 different podcasts, one on leading called Unbossing, one on the future of work called Rethinking Work, and one on anticipating the future, which is called What Next. So that's my one-to-many. One-to-some is a fancy way of saying speaking or workshops. I do that globally all over the world. That accounts for my 50 flights already this year, from small companies to multinational companies.
Wow.
And then my third one is one-to-one, which is advisory, which is not consulting, but some combination of providing people with a different voice, a different perspective, sometimes a little bit of coaching, but from someone who has nothing to sell, because I have a one-person company, which is just me. But I've run 100,000 people companies. I've done stuff all over the world. And so I can meet with leaders and tell them stuff that they may not want to hear, but they can't fire me.
I can't fire you. That's good. Wow. Well, that's impressive, Rishad. I mean,
So that is what I do now. So it's a one-person global business, but I used to run a big business too.
Wow. That is so. What made you transition? What was the last straw that you said, okay, at 37 years?
There wasn't a last straw in the fact that I was leaving something I disliked. I liked it, obviously, to spend 37 years there. In fact, I thrived. But as I was getting more seasoned, which is a way of saying older, I began to realize that I had a fantastic job that I enjoyed 70% of the time and didn't like that much 30% of the time. And that 30% had nothing to do with integrity or leadership or anything of the sort. Everything was fine. And if you get paid really well and you enjoy your job 70% of the time, and the
Yeah.
30% you don't has nothing to do with anything corrosive, you have a world-class job. You shouldn't ever try to leave it. But I decided to focus on the 30% that I didn't enjoy that much. And I determined that that was because I had bosses, clients, and people reporting to me. And when you have a board, you have to jump. When you have clients, you have to jump. When you have world-class talent, if you want to attract and retain them, you have to jump. And I decided that I wanted to control my time almost completely versus having that time where I did not control my time. So the only way to do that is if you want to have no boss, no clients, and nobody working for you, is you start working by yourself and hope for the best. And that's what I did. So in fact, I still advise my old company. My key card works, my email works, so I'm in very good standing. And they understood that after 37 years, I wanted this new adventure, which they supported.
Oh, man, well, that's great. That's great. Okay. Well, one of my questions I'm going to start off with, Rishad, is this then, after you gave us that. What's the most important lesson you've learned so far that's helped you become successful in your business?
So the most important thing I've ever learned is that the future does not adapt to us. We have to adapt to the future. And if you start blaming other people for your problems, you've already lost.
Yeah.
Because you have refused to adapt to the world around you. And I believe that if there was one word I would tell people is please try to stay relevant. Okay. So that's what I mean by you have to adapt to the future. The future does not adapt to you.
Mm-hmm.
And often you find yourself blaming other people or other things. Sometimes that's true, but most of the time it's you finding an excuse for your own inability to transform yourself.
Yeah. And I think mindset, changing that mindset.
Yes. Which is one of the reasons I call it growth, because there's this famous book, Growth Mindset.
Yep.
So growth mindset is someone who basically takes responsibility for their future. They continuously learn. They figure out from their setbacks what they took away. And then you have another mindset, which is a fixed mindset, where you blame other people and you look for confirming evidence versus why you might be wrong. And the growth mindset is clearly the way to operate to be successful, whether you're a company of one or a company of 100,000.
100. Right. Okay. It's getting rid of that, I guess you could say, my way or the highway type thing.
Yeah. So my way of the highway doesn't make sense outside of if you're basically Frank Sinatra singing a song.
Yeah. I agree totally, man. Right. All right. My next question then. So what do you think hinders a lot of men from reaching their full potential today?
So there are a couple of big things that we all struggle with. And everything I've said is not easy because we deal with emotion. And the first is people not understanding that we are emotional people. We think we're rational, we think we're macho, we think we're whatever. But the reality of it is we choose with our hearts and we use numbers to justify what we just did.
Yeah.
If that wasn't true, none of us would have children. We would not have been born. We would not drive expensive cars or buy expensive watches because it makes no rational sense. Okay. So the first is to recognize you're an emotional human being, which is you're messy. I'm not saying you're messed up, but you're sort of messy. And therefore, the first thing is, while you should hold yourself to a high standard, you should also be very kind to yourself. So a lot of people are not kind to themselves. They berate themselves. And that's what they do is they practice self-defeat. So I tell people, don't defeat yourself. There are enough people who want to defeat you. Don't defeat yourself. So be kind to yourself, obviously learn, recognize you are an emotional human being. So that's one thing that tends to hold people back. The second thing that tends to hold people back is the inability to unlearn. We're now in a world of AI. And one of the things I write about is how AI is making things very messy. So human intelligence, I believe, is now increasingly less relevant. Uh, Alien intelligence, that's how I refer to it, artificial intelligence, is far superior to us. But we have other things like human intuition and human insight and human inventiveness. Um, and that we need to focus on. But that means we have to learn and unlearn. And learning is hard, unlearning is even harder. So it's those two things: learn and unlearn, and don't practice self defeat.
Wow. And that's very, 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 very insightful, man. Because I think that is again one of the things that I see a lot of people that they shift their focus because they're distracted by a lot of things. Okay. In today's day with the social media and everything, I call it, we all call
Yeah.
it the shiny object.
Yes.
Okay. Where I have something, I know what my goal is. I want to go towards that, but then they read or see somewhere, I can do it better for you. I can
Yes.
do it. And they go off their path and now they're spinning the wheels and they're back where they were.
So there are three. I completely agree with you. So I'll give you three thoughts on that. The first is something which is an Egyptian saying called haraka baraka. So haraka baraka is motion is blessing. So many of us believe that by being active, we're making things happen, but effort does not mean results. So a lot of
Yeah.
people move from one thing to the other because it seems to be that they're doing things, right? And my whole stuff is doing things is not the same as getting things done, which is number one. Second, to your point, a guest on one of my podcasts, who his name is David Kenny. He used to be the chairman of Nielsen. He's the chairman of Best Buy. He basically said, "Hey, Rishad, it's very important to steer by the stars and not the ships passing by." This is to
Wow.
your point, right? Which is, what are your values and what are your goals versus someone coming around and whistling and you go in their direction. And in
Yep.
today's world, people are basically trying to mine your time, harvest and scavenge your brain, and they call it social media. But it's
Mm,
actually anti-social media, which is called social media. Okay. Because it actually makes you antisocial. It makes you feel less. It basically creates what I call comparison, which is the thief of joy.
yep.
Okay. So I think that is a second. And the third is that we have to sort of recognize that by our very nature, human beings, and that's good, which is the reason we keep striving, we get used to whatever we get. It's basically sort of just sort of a bias that, you want something and when you get it, now you want something else, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so those are the things that sometimes get us confused,
Nice.
which is, I don't have enough. Well, you've got more than you thought you had at the start. Okay. Well, what about that? Let me try that. Well, what were you trying to do in the first place?
Oh my
Right.
goodness.
And those are some of the things.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh my goodness. Giving us a lot to think about, man. And thank you for these insights.
Welcome.
Okay. My next question. For most men on the road to business or professional success, Rishad, other areas of your life get sacrificed. What's been one of the areas of your life that has suffered if you have had one? But where would you like to be successful now, too? So there's a two-part question.
Yeah. So basically, whenever you are going to get excellent at a certain thing, you have to make sure that in order to focus on that thing or those things or those people or that job, that you recognize that it means you won't focus on other things. So I often tell people, if you're going to do this, what are you going to do less of? Or what is the expense of what you are doing? So in my particular case, what I decided what was very important were three things and everything else didn't matter. Okay, so it wasn't one thing. So my basic belief is it was three things.
Uh-huh.
And at some particular stage, I might bias towards more one versus the three. And that was, I wanted to make sure that I had a successful career, that I had quality relationships, and that I kept myself healthy and did not die unnecessarily fast. Okay. So
Awesome.
in effect, what I basically thought to myself is in order to do that, I need to invest in my physical, mental, and emotional operating systems. And what I did is I still do, I get up every morning at 4:30. And when I'm in the US and I'm traveling, anything can happen. Um, and I basically spend the first hour reading or learning. So that's my mental operating system, because that helps me with my career. Even today, when I have to be helping people, I better be learning things. I just can't be helping people on yesterday's
Right.
news. Then I go for a swim or a run or something, which is my physical operating system. And then I talk to my kids or have breakfast with my wife or something or the other, which is my emotional operating system. And then I begin my work. So I've actually fed my mind, fed my relationships, and fed my
Body.
body before I start the day. So anything else that happens is not a problem.
Right.
And then I give up stuff. So I'll give you an idea of what I give up stuff. If you talk to me about sports, I can tell you that the Knicks won, right? But I
Yeah.
can't tell you a single player on the Knicks team.
Right.
Okay. So I give that up. I basically, so there are things you have to give up, right?
Right.
And so, but I decide those things. I
But
like
those three
sports,
things,
but my whole stuff is if I have to choose between sports and spending time with my wife and kids,
like,
I'll spend. Now, obviously, if I could go with them to sports, great, but they're not interested in sports, so I
right.
spend time with them. So my thing is always you don't have to do one thing, but you tend to basically be. Sometimes you might overemphasize work, but you want to never completely lose the relationship part of it and the physical part of it.
Right.
Because if you're not healthy, what's the use? And if you're really successful and healthy, but you got nobody to talk to, what's the use too?
Right.
Because I always tell people, one of the most interesting things and the things I'm proud about is my wife and I, when we met, I mean, it wasn't a child marriage. We met at 12. We started dating at 17. We've been married for 45 years. And, for the
Wow.
first 5, 6 years, we just figured things out and nothing had to do. Our success wasn't whether we'd make money or not. Okay. But what's really interesting these days where we don't have any financial issues, it's fun to basically think about the days when we were basically trying to figure out how to afford a Mr. Coffee machine. And the
Right.
fact that we can now go in and not worry about a Mr. Coffee machine makes it so much more fun because someone was with me when she and I remembered we didn't know how to get a Mr. Coffee machine
Yeah.
without basically, right? And so those are the things which is, it's always good. And a mountaintop doesn't have to be a successful career or money or things. But when you get to a place, it's always good to sometimes have somebody who started at the beginning with you.
Right.
And that's why I always say keep relationships in mind, keep obviously your health in mind, which is what this is, and then keep your career in mind because your career, like I always tell people, work is important, jobs are less important, though of course we all
Right.
want jobs. So I stopped having a job 7 years ago, but I have work. And the reason is work, a job gives you income, so does
Hmm.
work. But what work also gives you, which that's what job does, but work gives you, is it gives you identity. What do you do? People ask you. It gives you community. It gives you purpose. It gives you
Yep.
growth. So careers are important, people are important, and health is important.
Okay. Now you just took the next two questions and you summed that up because my
Yeah.
next question but you already handled it
Yeah.
is where do you find yourself at peace? I mean, that's what was my,
Yeah. So,
but
so peace for me is it through sanctuaries and rituals. So I basically
okay.
have what is known as sanctuaries and rituals. So all of us are different personalities. And, for me, there are three sanctuaries. One is, for instance, where I'm currently sitting, you only see some part of it, is my library, which is filled with books and music. And it's like a sanctuary. I can just sit here and it's my library. Now, my wife may come in, but it's like my place.
Right.
Okay. She's got her own places and we've got our places. But the thing is, so that's one. Second is talking to you this morning. It's 9 o'clock in Chicago. Today I went for a swim. So there's a pool at the Peninsula Hotel which is in the mornings, it's completely empty and I swim there. And that's another place. And a third is walking along. I like walks, so I walk around the place. That's a third place. So walking or swimming / exercising or in my library are peaceful places. Now, in all
Right.
those places, my wife could be there, my kids could be there. But when I'm talking to them and debating with them or helping them, that's a thriving place, but it's not necessarily a peaceful place. What I basically find, in my case, peace is not solitude, but it's basically silence, right? Or its rhythm or its flow versus something else.
Right. Like you just mentioned, we're all different.
Yeah.
And on one of my last podcasts, I had a person, a gentleman, say his piece was conflict.
Yeah. So everybody exactly is different. So for instance, I might be at peace reading and drinking a beer, which I think is, give me a draft beer and give me an iPad and I'm a
Right.
happy man.
Yeah. Because his analogy was, if I'm solving and helping people solve conflicts, I'm at peace.
Exactly. So everybody is different. You have to find your place. And that's very important. When you find your place, it becomes, a sanctuary or a ritual.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a form of religion outside of
right.
other religions that you have.
And that's why I followed that peace question up. I usually follow it, but you answered it again before I even asked it. Is, do you have a routine? And you just mentioned that you get up at 4:30 in the morning and you do your thing.
And one of the things, it wasn't mine, it was a Navy SEAL. It was a book I read. I think it was by Tim Ferriss, maybe, or maybe it was one of his podcasts. But there was a gentleman, and I forget the name, and I've quoted him in a couple of my books, who basically said he's a Navy SEAL, and he has this line, which I've decided is a great line, and I built things around it, which is discipline is freedom.
Wow.
Okay. That if you are disciplined, you actually have freedom. And so I have certain discipline, like I always tell people, hey, listen, we all want to let's say people want to make a whole bunch of money. That's fantastic. Well, for that, you need 3 disciplines. Okay. One discipline is, it may work or may not work, but you have to work hard because, it's not easy to just basically go to Polymarket or Kalshi and try to make money, right? Or do one-day option trading. So, okay, you have to work hard. Second is you got to think in the long run, which means you got to invest for the long run. And third is, in most cases, you can't beat the market, so buy a low-cost index fund. That's a discipline. Now, you do that and a base, and then give you your freedom to do your speculative stuff and your casino stuff and everything else. But that discipline gives you freedom. If you only did the madness, you would have no freedom because you'd be like broke.
Wow. That is so cool, man.
Right.
All right. My last question is this. Okay. And we'll end that with, is if you were to give that one piece of advice to other men that are starting out on their journey, okay, of achieving success, what would that be?
I would basically say, be very, very generous and kind.
Yeah.
Okay. So George Saunders, the famous writer, said, err in the direction of kindness. And my basic belief is give before you ask or get, because generosity is an amazing strategy. It's actually a great business strategy besides a life strategy. If you are generous, you'll actually feel good. Most people feel good helping people, including, solving conflict. When you help somebody, you actually feel good. So it's good. Okay. But when you help somebody, what you do is you create goodwill with that person. And that helps you both create a reputation and goodwill. But at times when you need help, people you helped will always come to help you.
Right.
Okay.
That is awesome.
So I always basically say, be generous and then be kind.
Be generous and kind. And then also to yourself, like you mentioned in the beginning.
And be generous also to yourself, which is, what I tell people is, give yourself a gift, go on a vacation. When you make mistakes, be kind. I mean, obviously don't say like I'm okay. You can say, okay, I made a mistake. I'm human. Here's what I've learned from it, but be kind. There's enough people who basically say we suck. We don't have to tell ourselves we suck.
Yep. You got it right, man.
Perfect.
That's awesome. Well, Rishad, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on. Your insights were awesome. I mean, they were very, very informative, man. It was awesome. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, John.
You're so welcome. And as a reminder to everyone listening, this show is brought to you by the Prime Performance Method, where we help high-performing men rebuild their strength, energy, and confidence without sacrificing their careers. So if you're ready to feel strong in your body as you are successful in your business, message me, John Fayocavitz, on LinkedIn. Until our next episode, perform stronger in all areas of your life.